all right, all we talk about is offense, 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 offense. We talk about the offense all off season. We talk about the offense all summer. We talk about the offense all through spring camp. And we've been talking about the offense all for the last, what's today? Today's the 21st. That means 3 weeks in a day. We've been talking about, actually 3 weeks to the day. It was 3 weeks ago from today that we had media day. That's when training camp started. And we've been talking about the offense nonstop since then. So what are we going to talk about today? The offense. Because what else will we talk about? We have to talk about the offense, particularly in light of news from Pat Narduzzi that the offense was a little bit better in the scrimmage on Sunday. And somebody jokingly asked on the message boards, after hearing that the offense won the scrimmage on Sunday, how soon are we going to have the posts about, are you worried about the defense? And I joked that, tomorrow's Morning Pitt is already in the can. We're not quite going to that level. We're not going to talk about being worried about the defense, but let's talk about the offense. Let's try to do our best to come up with some way to quantify why this offense will be better this year, if this offense will be better this year, and why we should expect this offense to be better this year. Let's break down the offense 1 through 11 right here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, I think if there was a best thing you could hear from Pat Narduzzi yesterday when he addressed the media for the first time since Sunday's scrimmage, if there was a best report he could give you, it would be that the offense was better in Sunday's scrimmage than it had been in the previous scrimmage, that they were cleaner, that they didn't have as many mistakes, and that they just sort of did better. And that seems to be the overall response. The offense won the scrimmage, which generally means they did a good job protecting the football, didn't make too many mistakes, and the defense wasn't able to make too many big plays. I don't think we take that as a concern with the defense. I think we take it more as a positive for the offense. That unit, and I said this last week after word was coming out that the offense didn't do very well in the first scrimmage. I said, look, this past week was one of the most important weeks for the offense and by extension the team in all of training camp. They had to take some big steps forward. And I don't know if they took the big steps forward, but they at least played better in the second scrimmage than they had in the first. And not necessarily to say that the defense played worse. It sounds like this was a matter of the offense just generally cleaning things up. One penalty, according to Pat Narduzzi, who at times can be an unreliable narrator, one penalty on the first and second team offense combined, which seems like a pretty good thing if you run 200 plays or 120 plays or whatever they said they ran, and they only ended up with one penalty. That seems like a good thing. You got to avoid the procedure penalties and all that. If this whole operation is going to base itself on tempo and speed and pushing the tempo and going no huddle, then you can't be out there having false starts and snap infractions and illegal motion and not getting set. I mean, you need to have all of those things razor sharp in order to operate this kind of offense at to its fullest capacity. Because I don't want to call it like a gimmick that you go up tempo, but to some extent it is. It's a tactic, right? Well, the whole thing falls apart if every time you're trying to go up tempo, the clock stops, the whistle blows, and you lose 5 yards because you don't have somebody set when you snap the ball. So cleaning it up, I mean, that's almost as important as any other element with this offense. I mean, I think they're trying to get an upper hand on defense, on opposing defenses, with the tempo that they use. So you better be able to run the tempo effectively. I mean, all the other things that come after that of executing the plays, I mean, those are all obviously very important. You've got to get the ball to the receivers. You've got to block well and all of those things. You have to make a man miss and all of that. But, boy, you're sort of shutting it down before it even gets started if you don't get lined up right. So it seems like they cleaned all of that up, and not just cleaned all of that up, but played well enough to win the scrimmage and come out with the blue jerseys yesterday. The blue jerseys means that they won the most recent scrimmage. That means the offense will carry those blue jerseys into the season. Forget if they changed the blue and the white jerseys midway through the season, based on the performances in the games. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the offense appears to be trending in the right direction, and that's what you want to see at this point. We always talk about that age-old cliche of football that defense starts faster in a training camp than offense, and that was the case for Pitt this season. But at a certain point, you need that balance to shift where the offense starts to catch up and maybe even start asserting itself. And it seems like in this most recent scrimmage, that's what happened with Pitt's offense. So things seem to be heading in the right direction on that side of the ball. But what do we think overall about this offense? What gives us confidence, if you have confidence, that this offense is going to be better than last year's offense was? Last year's offense was the giant gaping wound of a vulnerability for the team and ultimately led them to a 3-9 record. What leads you to believe that it will be better this year? I have a few things. My legal pad will help me. Not all this scribbling at the top. That's all the linebacker stuff from yesterday. This scribbling down to the bottom is how the legal pad will assist us through this conversation. As always, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, to get all of the Pitt video content, these daily Morning Pitt videos, your Pat Narduzzi press conferences, other player and coach interviews, practice, well, not anymore practice highlights because they're not letting us shoot video at practice anymore. Although I might have some videos left over from last week. So I should put those online and be like, I still have video of practice, even though you don't let us take video anymore. But we'll have that kind of stuff. We have our live show that we do every Wednesday night at 8:30. That's tonight with me and Jim Hammett. And then next Saturday, not this Saturday, but next Saturday will be the season opener against Kent State. And you know what that means? After we get home from Acrisure Stadium, we're firing up the old live stream Dream Machine for the post-game show right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Now, you don't want to miss any of that, so make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's a place to get all of your Pitt sports coverage, football, basketball, recruiting. We have it all at Panther-Lair.com, and message boards for you and other Pitt fans to talk together about Pitt sports. Everything's going on with the quarterback battle. Everything's going on with the team. We've got it covered at Panther-Lair.com. And if you want to be a part of it, if you want to check it out, if you want to get the best coverage, we got a special offer for you. Sign up now, and just this week, because this promo ends on Friday, all right? But sign up now and get 60% off an annual subscription. 60% off a year of the best Pitt coverage with the promo code KICKOFF2024. Kickoff 2024. All one word, no spaces. 60% off the first year of your annual subscription. It's a crazy deal. I made this joke on Twitter yesterday. Like, when I go to the grocery store and they have the berries BOGO, I get excited. I buy a lot of berries. And, man, that's only 50% off. We're giving you a year of the best Pitt coverage for 60% off. It's better than the berries. So go check it out. Panther-Lair.com. Go to the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Use the promo code KICKOFF2024 to get it right now. 60% off. All right. So will the offense be better than it was last year? Well, let's go position by position. How does Pitt compare at each position on offense to where they were a year ago? I mean, this is probably the simplest way to determine whether they'll be better. Right? There's a question of how good they'll be, or if we conclude that they'll be better, there's a question of how much better they'll be. Or if we conclude that they'll be worse, there's a question of how much worse they'll be. Although you can probably guess which way I'm leaning in this before we even start the discussion. There's always going to be a question of how much improvement there is. But just on a pass fail, +1, 0, or -1, scale, let's give a score to this offense compared to last year of how they'll be. Quarterback last. Because, I mean, come on. You gotta give people what they want last. You know what I mean? You have to keep them coming back for more. We can't start with the quarterback. Let's start with the offensive line. All right. Now, there's going to be a recurring theme here on some of these positions where we're sort of assuming natural progression. The guys are going to get better. Some of the returning starters are going to get better just from being a year older and a year more experienced. And I'll start at left tackle with Branson Taylor. And I would say, actually, I'm not going to give a huge upgrade. I don't know. I would probably just go like a neutral grade as far as the improvement from 23 to 24, because I think Branson Taylor, I think he'll be a little bit better than he was a year ago. But I think he kind of is who he is. And I think he's a very solid, very sound left tackle. I think he'll do a good job over there. I don't know if he'll be an all-conference player, but I think he'll do a perfectly good job protecting the blind side for these quarterbacks, unless Julian Duggar gets in, and then he'll be on the front side, right? But I would say Branson Taylor is a neutral change, maybe a slight improvement, but not enough to merit a +1. Left guard, on the other hand, where they're going to be going from, last year I think it was Jason Collier primarily. I think maybe Zabovic played there as well. To Ryan Jacoby, I'm going to give this a +1. And I know we haven't really seen Ryan Jacoby outside of playing tight end in 2022, and he was like an extra blocker all those times. But I think it's going to be an upgrade. I think the play at left guard was pretty poor last year, and I think it's going to be an upgrade to have Jacoby out there. He's a guy that the staff has been excited about really for 4 years now. I often tell this story that, he transferred from Ohio State late in the summer of 2021. Late arrival, offensive line, you're not going to get on the field anytime soon. It's going to take you a while to learn the playbook. It's going to take you a while to kind of get yourself into that position. By the end of the year, he was on the field. He impressed the coaches that much with his knowledge of the offense, his understanding of what they were doing, that he got on the field in the last few games, including the Peach Bowl. And I think the ACC Championship. He might have actually started the Peach Bowl as an extra tight end or something like that, an extra lineman. And so I think Jacoby, even though he was hurt last year, and I mean, last year should have been his big year, I think he'll make up for it this year, and I think he'll be an upgrade. At center is an interesting position, because you've got Terrence Moore coming back after starting, the final 9 games last season. But there's been this sort of emerging position battle with Lyndon Cooper, the NC State transfer. And it seems like Cooper has the advantage. So I really look at it like, you either have like a neutral or +1 if it's Terrence Moore, right? If Terrence Moore just is the same player he was last year, or if he improved, which I think is plausible. That was the first time, his first real, actual playing time last season, which would make him a +1. Or you have Lyndon Cooper beating Terrence Moore for the job, which makes him inevitably a +1. You know what I mean? Like, you're going head-to-head with the guy who was the starter last year, so you end up with a +1. I think at worst at center, you have a neutral, and more likely, either from Moore's individual improvement or Cooper beating Moore for the job, you've got a +1. So I think, across the offensive line now, left tackle, I think you've got a neutral. Left guard, you've got a +1. Center, I think you're going to end up with a +1. Right guard, BJ Williams, same guy who started last year, but he was a true freshman last year. And while I said, Branson Taylor, I'd probably just call it a neutral. Don't think he's probably that much improved. I think BJ Williams is probably leaps and bounds above where he was a year ago. I mean, you think about other guys who have played really young on the offensive line. It's often an adventure, and sometimes a disaster that first year, but they're much better in their second season. And I think BJ Williams will be as well. Ditto for right tackle Ryan Baer. He wasn't a true freshman last year, but he was getting the first playing time of his career as a redshirt freshman. Now he's a redshirt sophomore. I think he's going to be a big step ahead. So I think this offensive line, you look across, I think you've got a neutral change at left tackle. Then I think you've got +1 at left guard, center, right guard, and right tackle. I mean, that's pretty good. Now, I mean, we can talk about the depth, and that's going to be a big question mark. If they have somebody who gets hurt, that's going to be problematic. But I think across the board on the offensive line, you're a +4, improvement. Tight end, tight end, the +1 neutral or -1 for tight end is going to totally come down to whether or not they throw the ball to Gavin Bartholomew. That's all. So it's out of his control. I think he's the same guy he's been, probably in better shape than he's been in the past. But he's the same guy he's been. It's just a matter of whether they're going to actually throw it to him. There is something said about Jake Overman as the top backup versus Carter Johnson last year, but I'm not going to give that position a -1 just because of that. It's all about Gavin Bartholomew at the tight end spot. Wide receiver is an interesting one. I think Konate Mumfield last year to Konate Mumfield this year is probably a neutral. I think we more or less know who he is, and he's good. I don't expect him to be leaps and bounds better this year than he was last year. I think he was pretty good last year. The other 2 receiver spots are sort of interesting. I think you're going from Bub Means to Kenny Johnson. For the purpose of our conversation here, we're pretty much looking at last year's group of Konate Mumfield, Bub Means, and Dejon Reynolds. This year's group of Mumfield, Kenny Johnson, and then Reynolds or Poppy Williams probably, right? So if we're having sort of the 1-to-1 comparison of Bub Means and Kenny Johnson, I can't make it a +1 right now, and I probably can't even make it a neutral just based on what Johnson has done in his career. You know what I mean? I think he's going to be a really good player. I also, as you know, I drove the Bub Means hype train last year and was very excited about how he finished the season. And so, for now, on August 21st, it's a -1. For now. A month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, 4 months from now, I could very much be a +1. But right now, based on body of work, I mean, Kenny Johnson did very little last year. And that's not his fault, and it doesn't mean we don't think he's capable of a lot. But right now, I have to call it a -1. That one is very much TBD. And then, the third receiver spot, either Reynolds to Reynolds or Reynolds to Poppy Williams. I don't have a great feel for it. I like Dejon Reynolds. I think he's a solid player. I also think Poppy Williams is going to really blow up in this offense. I think he's got a chance to be really good. He knows the offense. He's had success in the offense, and I think it sounds like he's doing really well in training camp. So I think there's a possibility of a +1 there. We'll call it a net neutral for now, but I think there's a possibility of a +1. So the wide receiver group, largely, maybe a -1, just for the transition from Bub Means to someone else. In our one-to-one comparison, Kenny Johnson. But, I think for right now, it's a neutral or a -1. Very much could end up being like a +2 by the end of the season. At running back, you're basically going from last year Rodney Hammond and Sebo Flemister to this year Rodney Hammond and Desmond Reed. And I'm buying in on Desmond Reed. I really am. I was looking more at his stats and some of his stuff on Pro Football Focus yesterday, and I'm buying in. I'm buying in on this being an improvement. I'm buying in on this being a +1. I think Rodney Hammond is a neutral to neutral, a neutral change. I think he is who he is. The biggest change for Rodney Hammond this year might just be usage and opportunity and how much the position coaches actually put him out there and how much he gets the ball. But I think Desmond Reed is going to touch the ball a lot. I think Desmond Reed is going to make a lot of plays. I think Desmond Reed's going to be really good. And I think he's going to be a better player than Sebo Flemister was. So I think I think that's a +1 right there. And then we come to quarterback. What do we do with quarterback? Actually, there's no hesitation or suspense. I mean, this is a +1. This is a +1. When your comparison points are Phil Jurkovec and Christian Veilleux, Nate Yarnell on his own is a +1 over those guys because last year he was a +1 over those guys. Nate Yarnell was better in his 2 games than Veilleux and Jurkovec were in their 10 games. And so right off the bat, you've got a +1 at the quarterback position. Now you throw in the Eli Holstein question or the Eli Holstein factor, and it becomes even more interesting, and I think just further reinforces the +1 because here's the reality, all right? We know who Nate Yarnell is. I think we know who Nate Yarnell is. I know we've only seen him play 3 starts. We've only seen him throw 75 or 76 passes in his career, but I think we know who Nate Yarnell is. I kind of believe in him being that 65 to 68% completion guy, not a ton of yards per attempt, really solid touchdown to interception ratio. And I always say solid because I don't think his touchdowns will be that high, but his interceptions will be really low. Just a really solid, efficient quarterback, protects the ball, gets it to the receivers. I think that's who he is. And if that's all he is, and he's the starter this year, it will be a +1 over Jurkovec Veilleux. But if Eli Holstein wins the job, and it's still very much a possibility, and it might not be prior to the Kent State game, it might be something we see play out in real time during the season. But if Eli Holstein wins the job, that tells me that not only is Holstein equal to Yarnell in taking care of the ball, but he's shown that upside, whether it's in his running or it's in his arm or just his ability to lead the offense. He's got that upside. So I think the baseline this year, the bare minimum at quarterback play is a +1. And there's a potential for it to be, an emphasized +1 if Eli Holstein beats out Nate Yarnell, because it would mean that Holstein is even better than Yarnell, who I think will be better than the guys last year. If A is greater than B and B is already greater than C, then A or B will be greater than C. C being those decidedly below average quarterbacks that Pitt had last season. So we run down the roster. I think you've got a +1 at quarterback. I think you've got a +1 at running back. I think you've got -1 at wide receiver. All right, so we're down to just +1, right? The quarterback and running back had the offense as a whole at +2. Wide receiver will take a -1. We'll go back to just +1. Tight end, I'm calling it a neutral. And then the offensive line, I think you've got a +4. So you're looking at +5, I think, with upgrades at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 positions. 6 out of the 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, with tight end, left tackle, two of the receiver spots pretty much staying neutral and one receiver spot being a minus. So will the offense be better this year? I think they will, because I think they've only gotten worse at one position, and everything else is either an upgrade or, a neutral change. The same guys, the status quo, which when you're talking about Gavin Bartholomew, Konate Mumfield, and Branson Taylor, that's a pretty good status quo to have. I think that's a pretty solid place to be. So, and not to mention an upgraded quarterback, which should be huge for this team. So that's that's me trying to make the case. Which ones do you disagree with? I'm sure a lot of people will feel like, well, Kenny Johnson's an obvious upgrade over Bub Meads. He may end up being so. I just don't know if he is yet. We'll have to wait and see on that. But which ones do you agree with? What do you disagree with? What do you think I got right? And which ones do you think I did not? So be excited to see what you think. Leave it in the YouTube comments. Respond on Twitter, on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. Oh, you can't log into the message boards at Panther-Lair.com because you're not a premium subscriber. Good opportunity here for you to get 60% off 1 year of the best Pitt sports coverage you're going to find. Go to Panther-Lair.com right now. Use the promo code KICKOFF2024, and you'll get 60% off a full year of the best Pitt sports coverage you're going to find. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Don't forget, we got the live show tonight at 8:30. Can't wait for that. Me and Jim Hammett will be here talking a little Pitt sports with you. Hopefully you can tune in, join the comments. We'll have a lot to talk about for sure. And then, like this video and subscribe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd very much appreciate it. All right, have a great Wednesday. We'll see you on the live stream tonight, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow morning for the Morning Pit right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.